Welcome to Become the Leader, the show that equips you to rise higher, lead stronger, and become the leader you would follow. Hey guys, I'm Jody Holland,
I am Mike Grigsby.
And I'm Megan.
and welcome to the Become the Leader podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about books that changed lives. Specifically, we're going to be talking about books that changed our own lives and things that have really helped us. And I know I've read a lot of books, but I want to go back to a quick story of when I first went into business. I had a guy that I really wanted him to coach me. He was a multimillionaire, successful entrepreneur. And I went to him like, please, please, please coach me. And I'm 27 years old and I don't know much about anything at 27 years old. Thought I was smart back then, but now I realize I wasn't. And he goes, I'll tell you what, I will mentor you or coach you or whatever you want to call it, but you have to commit to something for me. I said, anything. In my mind, I was really thinking, I'm going to mow his yard. I'm going to wash his car. I'm going to take out his trash, do stuff like that. But what he asked for was, I want you to commit to reading one book per month for the rest of your life. And immediately in my mind, I'm like, oh, I really just wanted him to coach me for a few months. And I started making excuses about how hard that was going to be. I mean, 12 books a year? Who has time to read that much? But I committed because I really wanted this guy's advice, and it was absolutely worth it. And the very first book that he had me read is one that somebody else had already given me in the past, but it was the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I have a few different variations here. One of the more original looking ones right there that has 400,000 words on the cover of it, I think. But in the book, what was interesting to me is that when you start thinking about where you want to be in your life, you start to recognize everything is centered around the way you think about you and what you're providing to this world. So I think it was some of the best advice I ever could have gotten, or the best challenge is to read a book a month for the rest of my life. And I know that Mike has a little bit of a story of when he and I met, and we took our little trip to Austin and got him excited about reading.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
going to turn it over to you, let you kind of
Uh,
introduce what you're
I think
thinking
it's
about.
I think it's so fitting that Think and Grow Rich is the book that you picked. It's a classic, right? First of all, two, it is a wealth of information, and I remember the first time I started reading it. Napoleon Hill, partway through either the introduction or chapter one, he's like, and you're gonna find the secret on every page. And I got done reading that book. I was like, I'm gonna call liar on that one because I didn't find anything on any of the pages that even came close to looking like a secret. But truly, truly special version of that, and I still have it. I actually loaned it to Malia, but you and I have a copy. You gave it to me, and it had been given to you by someone very special who's since passed on now, Doug Pritchett. But that's a very special book. It's not the one I chose, but it's a really special book. I think the story that you're talking about it goes back to when you and I first started. Um, I don't even know if I don't even know if you and I had started working together yet.
No.
We had just taken a business trip together, and for the audience to, a little bit of background, I'm sure we'll get into more as we go through the podcast. But Jody and I met because Jody was originally my client. His company was working on a very special project, and they were going to rebrand everything. They were moving to a click and mortar business. This is back for those of you, this is back at the height of the dot-com bubble. And they were moving to a click and mortar. They were going to revamp their entire logo, company, have an on-site a website presence, online presence, and so forth. And I was the project leader for the advertising agency that I worked for, and Jody was the project leader for his company. And he and I got to working, and about 6, 8 months into the project, we finally got it across the finish line, landed it, and then like 2 days later, you quit the company and started your own business.
It
So
was 2 weeks, but
it was
still.
2 weeks, right? But it was really interesting because I had read, I was a conscientious objector in high school. I actively chose not to read anything. And I'll if we got time, I'll tell a quick story about it. But I chose not to read. and because I just thought it was boring and movies were better. But when I got into the military and kind of got on my own, I started really reading, voraciously even. Um, but when you and I met, you started talking about business books, and it was just a brand new world. I hadn't read any business books up until that time. And I don't remember what the real number is, whether it was 12 or 20 or 30, or maybe we've talked to, I don't know what the number
23
is
is what I
now.
wrote down in my
20
notebook.
23 books in 1 month. 1 month after that trip, I devoured everything I could get my hands on. Every 1 minute manager book that's out there, Think and Grow Rich. And to this day, I don't know that I read a new book every month, but I read a book every month. And as we all know, there's so much to unpack from even just one writing. um, the book that I chose um, is on my Kindle. You can't see the title of it, but I really tried. I really did, Jody. I really did, Megan. I was trying to be good and only pick one title.
Couldn't
I
do
had
it,
to
could
boil
you?
it down to two. I couldn't do it. So the two most influential books that I have read, outside the Bible, I guess, but the two most influential ones I have read is one called um, uh, the Heavenly Life by James Allen, and the
Great book.
second one is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Also a
And
great book.
The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is an easy read. It engrosses you from the first chapter, and I read that probably once a year.
Yeah.
So
And
it's an easy book to read.
that's what I do on Think and Grow Rich is every January I reread that book. And I've been in business for 26 years. I've actually kind of kept track. I've actually done 31 times
Oh
through
wow.
Think and Grow Rich. I've done it more than just the once a year, but I've done 31 times through the same book. And like you said, sometimes there's more in a book than you can get on one read. You have to reread
or,
it a
or,
few
or
times.
17.
Yeah. Or in my case, 31. All
31,
right.
right?
So, Megan, what made you fall in love with reading? Because I know you are a voracious reader as well.
I've had an interesting relationship with books because growing up as the daughter of an author and a reading teacher, I was reading constantly. I loved books. You would catch me every weekend reading in my free time. And then I got really busy with school, went to college. I didn't really read much, and I kind of
Well,
got bored of
you
it.
didn't read much of what you wanted to read. You read
Yes.
all the time.
I read what I was forced to read. I didn't get to read what I wanted to read. So, for a while there, I was just reading textbooks and educational books. And then once I graduated, I kind of got back into reading again. And now I'm to the point where I can't go a single day without reading. So, it's been fun, and I've been introduced more to business books in the last year and a half or so. And I'm getting to the point where I try to read at least one business book a month as well. I'm at about 60 books for the year total. Not all of them are business books, though.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, I'm barely trying according to that comparison.
I just love getting into the story, and I love that you can relate to the characters in each of the books, and you can find out information, whether it's fictional or it's educational. You can learn something from pretty much every book that you pick up.
Hmm.
And one of my favorite business books is Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer
Love it.
Johnson.
I love it.
That one is such a good, it's such a simple read, but you can learn so much from it. And part of what I have loved in my career is getting to different perspectives and learning what motivates different people. And part of that comes from my love of photography and
Mhm.
trying to find unique perspectives on things. And I have translated that into pretty much everything that I have done. And so in Who Moved My Cheese, it's all about changing your perspective and figuring out how you adapt to change and move forward so that you don't stagnate. And I love putting yourself into the story of books.
I do too. And really, if you can find an author that writes business books with stories integrated into it and that kind of stuff, it's
Mhm.
really fantastic. And
Yep.
you said that it's there's no way we can just talk about the three books, but Andy Andrews is a phenomenal author out of
Yeah.
Orange Beach, Alabama, and he wrote the book called The Traveler's Gift. And he was
Yeah.
one of the
So good.
first authors that I read that I'm like, this is the greatest fiction, like not fiction, but fiction book I've ever read. And he was talking about the seven decisions for success. And I like a lot of the books around success. And I think a lot of that, including Who Moved My Cheese, really centers around what are you saying inside your own head that's playing out in the world around you? Is the things that we say to ourselves become the reality we experience. And that's where Hill's premise of Think and Grow Rich, where I believe that it really centers in, because he was so good at helping you understand you're not just you're not just showing up and doing the thing. You're
Yeah.
showing up and you are becoming a version of yourself based on whatever you believe about yourself. And one of the quotes that I loved out of that book was, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." And I used that quote, not knowing that was a Napoleon Hill quote, but I used that quote on ropes courses when I worked for the Boy Scouts back in the early 1990s. And I would, people get out on the ropes course and you've got to climb 30 feet in the air and stand on top of a telephone pole and, yell something inspirational and then jump off. But we would use that quote because we go, your mind, if you can conceive of the idea of you being able to overcome this challenge and you can believe in the version of you that can overcome this, you can absolutely achieve it. There are no limitations to the mind except those that we acknowledge. And that was the concept and mindset and belief that I love so much. And for me, early on in business, I started reading like sales and customer service and leadership. And I'm like, these are all really valuable. But I noticed I kept getting my butt kicked. And I went back to the very first book, that book, Think and Grow Rich. And I thought, what am I missing here? Because Mike said, Hill talks about that you'll find the secret on every page. I did not in the beginning. But it's kind of like when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Yeah.
Same kind of concept within
So
books,
true.
that you will notice the thing that is important once it's important enough to you. And when I finally realized, oh, what I'm doing wrong is I'm believing wrong. I know all this information. I know leadership. I read everything John Maxwell wrote and everything Ken Blanchard wrote and everything Patrick Lencioni wrote. And I read everything I could, but I still had to believe in me. And that's the part that living a rich life, that's what I got out of the book anyway, isn't just about the financial part of it. I mean, that is one piece of it, uh, but it's more about what is richness to you. And to me, richness is a balance of family and finance and friendship and physical fitness. It's all of the different aspects of your life being balanced the way that they're supposed to. You have to have this tremendous concept of self in order to get there. But to get there, you got to be willing to change. So I'm going to flip it back to Megan to talk a little bit about Who Moved My Cheese from Spencer Johnson.
So in the book, there are four main characters. Um, him and Haw are the little people in there, and then Sniff and Scurry, I believe, are
I
the
think you're
two.
right. Yeah.
And each of them approach the cheese in a different way, and they're always looking to see, well, this is my cheese now, but what's going to happen in the future? And at some point, somebody takes away the cheese. So, what are you going to do from here? How are you going to overcome this lack of cheese that you're used to? Are you going to take action? Are you going to run off? Are you going to hesitate and just complain that you don't have your cheese anymore? But the ultimate decision is up to you what you're going to do. And sometimes it is a little bit scary and we do hesitate because we don't like change. We don't like stepping into the unknown. But there's great value in stepping into the unknown because you can discover so much more. There could be an entire room full of cheese just down the hall, but you won't ever know until you step out of your comfort zone and go out and look for it. And usually, when I read business books, I like to read it all the way through one time, and then I'll go back and I'll annotate, going back to what you said, that you can miss so much the first time that you read it. So sometimes
Mhm.
I just like to digest the story, and then I like to go back and actually analyze it. Take notes. I highlight my favorite quotes. I probably have an entire notebook full of my favorite quotes from different books that I like to just go back and reference at times. or look for inspiration from. But I think it's so helpful. And I used to be so scared of marking up my books because I didn't want to mess them up. I want them to be absolutely perfect. But if you're going back and you're reading it
Yeah,
again for a third, like the third or fourth time, you already have things that were important to you the first time, and you can go back and look at those again and see how your own perspective on even just the words have changed. Because, like you said, one thing might matter at this point in your life, and another
yeah,
piece of information is going to matter more later on.
yeah.
So I always like
That's
notes.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like getting notes or getting books from Jody because they were always marked up. I had to cover up the notes so I could have my
So
own
you can have
thoughts.
your own thoughts.
I could have my own thoughts about it. But that's true, Megan. You know, if you, especially if you get a book, you know, in when you're 21 years old and you read it again when you're 25, read it again when you're 30, 35, like your life is in such a different space. Words and meanings and situations play out so differently. I actually want to circle back to something that you said, Megan, about the photography. I'm really curious, and maybe people in the audience are too. How does photography actually change the way that you read books? And I have a thought around that because of my own experience, but I'm really curious. How does that either shape or kind of influence how you read books?
That's an interesting point because in photography, the picture is what you focus on. So for me, I personally like to zoom in on the finer details when I'm taking photos, but you can hand a camera to anybody else and they could take an entirely different photo of the same landscape. I think the same thing happens in books.
Oh, that's cool.
You
Wow, that's
focus
good.
in on one particular point and you carry that throughout the book. So if you're looking at change as the main theme, then you're going to analyze every chapter with that lens of your perspective. And someone else might be looking at it as far as hesitation. And so, whatever you focus on, you're going to find within the chapters or within a photo. And I just think it's so unique because whether you're writing a story, reading a story, taking a photo, it doesn't matter what the actual thing is, it's going to look different for everybody.
And I think
Um,
taking
yeah.
that photography lens, so to speak, of looking at the books, it made me think, even when I write a book, I don't write it thinking, oh, I need to focus on how this will sell. Is that I think there's a lot of authors that freeze up because they're just trying to figure out what the next bestseller is. And I don't know if you've watched, but recently the number one country song or top 10 country song, 100% AI generated. It's not even a country artist. It's like some made up, rough looking country dude singing, but he's not actually singing. It's AI that wrote the song, AI that recorded the song, and AI video production that made the video to go with the fake song.
Wow.
But it
Interesting.
hits all of the trigger points, and the only goal was to sell songs. So there is a way to just quote unquote sell, but then a lot of the books, thinking about the way I read books and the way I would write books, I'm reading the book to figure out what is missing with me that needs to grow when I'm reading it, and what is missing within me that if the better version of me was advising me, he would challenge me and push me to grow. And that I think our personalities are the lens that we look at the books through to figure out what do I focus on.
I think it's kind of funny, you know, we hear about like movie critics and we worry about that and you know, sports analysts and everything else. To your point, Megan, everybody looks at it through their own lens. I mean, the Mount Everest has been climbed how many different times by how many different people, and every single person has their own story of what that experience was like. And it's the same with reading, right? You can dive into a book and like I didn't get anything out of that, or you can dive in, someone else dives into the same book and like this is world changing, life changing for me. You know, I know that the reason I talked about or asked about the photography was 2007. I took a trip to Mexico and we had bought our first digital camera. and I got to take it with me. I was super excited. It wasn't on our phones back then, at least not good ones weren't on our phones. But I took this, and I remember it was a little Kodak deal, and it gave you instructions in the book, like tips on how to take photography. Now, I am not a photographer at all by any stretch of the imagination. Nobody wants selfies or pictures taken by me. They always have to be redone. But I remember a point in there as a tip. It said, get close, then get closer. And I remember as I took pictures throughout Mexico, two things happened. One, I wasn't taking selfies of me in any of these places. And what I was really trying to do was help people, my family and friends who were going to look at these photos. I wanted them to be able to experience Mexico the way I was. So I wasn't in the pictures. I was taking pictures of things I was doing. And I got close and then I got closer. And the pictures turned out amazing. I haven't done any good photography since, but the pictures turned out really, really good. And when I read, I kind of take that same approach. I get close and then I get closer. And Jody knows this.
Mhm.
I dive into the etymology of words as I'm reading a story. I don't take the notes, but like if a word hits me in a particular way, I'll go look up the etymology, not the definition of it. I want to know why we started using that word to mean that thing. And oftentimes I'll find that there's an obscure meaning to a word that lands even that has even more impact while I'm reading it because they chose that word. And it's in that respect, it's like it's not just about reading the story, it's about being fully engrossed in it and understanding the meaning behind the meaning behind the meaning, so to speak, when you're looking at these. And it can really be life changing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's more than just the words on the page, it's how you use the words. And there are stories all around us. And I think stories are so much more impactful than just saying, buy this or do this. You want to get to the deeper meaning, the root of the why you're doing something, because that's what truly inspires action. Telling somebody, go
Mhm.
out and do better is not going to make them do better. You
No.
have to actually pull on their heartstrings, get into their mind, get them to understand why it's important, how it's going to benefit them, and what they'll lose if they don't take action.
And
Right.
I think that part's important too. And that's, I mean, you look at the book that you brought up, The Who Moved My Cheese, you lose out on the next better version of your life. Whatever the cheese or the opportunity is that is next, you miss out on that. And I just looked up the stats. Um, when that book was published, it ended up selling over 30 million copies of Who Moved My Cheese. Like
Jeez.
that is some amazing cheese that that dude brought in,
Yeah.
selling 30
A lot
million
of cheddar.
copies. But it just shows you how desperately we want to understand how to get back up. And I'm going to start pulling this together here. But one of my favorite quotes out of Napoleon Hill's book was on failure. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. And that's the thing I've tried to keep in mind is that anytime you have a setback, the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit exists there. Who Moved My Cheese was published in 1998. I'm not sure on your book, Mike. And then Think and Grow Rich was published back in 1937.
Yeah.
Over the 85 plus years of that book being on the market, Think and Grow Rich, it has passed 120 million copies sold,
Jeez.
which is shockingly huge. And it is one of the best entrepreneurial books of all time, I think.
Yeah. I think Heavenly Life was published either 1910 or 1912,
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I
somewhere,
knew it was a little
somewhere
bit
in there.
before Hill
Yep.
was around, but and
Yeah.
Heavenly Life, that's one of those books that you could reread that book every single day for a month. And you actually
Well,
challenged
I
me
was
to
going to say I
do
did.
that.
I actually did. 2013, I think it was. I that was the only book I read that year. And as soon as I finished it, I started again. As soon as I finished it, I started again. I found an audio version of the book and put it onto a CD or thumb drive or whatever and listened to it in my car. It was the only thing that I read in that year, and it just I don't know. I probably went through it a good 50, 60, maybe even 70 times between the audio and the reading. And to this day, I can still read it and extract something new out of it.
hmm I did that with As a Man Thinketh, that I read it every day.
Same author.
hmm
Yeah.
Yep, and it was powerful as well. And I just remember, that it opens up with, um, see if I can remember this. Mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes the tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth a thousand joys, a thousand ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass. And I think that one fits with Hill's work of Think and Grow Rich, because what James Allen talked about in a lot of his books was, how do we get past the restrictive thinking and understand everything that is in your life, your entire environment? Go back to the lens of perspective, is what you focus on. So you've got all this noise going on around you. And if you narrow your focus to what I can do right now, not what's missing, not what's going on with the world or politics or any of that other junk, just what can I do right now in this moment to move my life forward? Then all of a sudden, you can take some action. And you're not locked down anymore. You're like, well, I can do something. I may not know everything, but I know something. So, what's
Well,
something out of Heavenly Life that you got that you think was really impactful?
about the present, you know, the present is all you have. That's it. There is no yesterday, there is no tomorrow. Everything is in the present, and it's the only place that you can actually solve your problem. You can't solve your problem yesterday, you can't solve your problem tomorrow. You can't take advantage of this opportunity yesterday, you can't take advantage of this opportunity tomorrow. Everything is within the present, and when you understand that, simplicity starts to drip over everything that you're doing. It may not be the easiest thing, but it's ridiculously simple.
Say that quote one more time. Simplicity begins to drip.
Drip over everything. Like when you understand that the present moment is all that you have, it's the only place where action actually can take place. Simplicity begins to drip over everything in your world.
So, what's interesting when you think about that from a psychological perspective is that our present moment will determine what our past actually was.
Yeah.
Because your past is just a recall of a story that you gave meaning to an experience with. And if your present moment is at peace, then your past is at peace and your future is full of potential.
I
And
So
think
true.
between the two of you, you have a library of quotes memorized.
well, it's funny because people are
Yeah.
like, how do you memorize that so fast? I'm like, you do know I read Think and Grow Rich 31 times.
Like 31
I,
times, right?
I read
75
James
times. Yeah.
Allen probably 50 plus times
Yeah.
As a Man Thinketh, and it was after Mike challenged me to do that. So the thing I see with a lot of us is we push each other to get comfortable in the maze. How do you get out of what you were used to and into what the possibilities are, which is Who Moved My Cheese? And I do think there's a lot of books out there that people should explore. Obviously, I would love for you to buy my books if you are interested in reading. I've got books on leadership and service and time management and all of that, but also quick rundown, top three favorite authors. It could be business or fiction, either one. I'll go first so you guys have time to think. My number one has been Napoleon Hill. I've read everything I could get my hands on, even his old lecture series. My second one is Jim Collins. I think he's one of the most practical advisors in the business world. And then my third is Andy Andrews. And I just love his writing style and how simple and practical the things are that he advises. Who's
Yeah.
next?
I'll go. James Allen, Andy Andrews, and it's a toss up between Lencioni and Maxwell, John Maxwell or Patrick Lencioni. Both of them for the same reason. Uh, John Maxwell certainly has a larger library and is well known, but I like the way that he pulls the points together. But yeah, those are the three.
Megan?
I don't think it's fair to limit it to just three.
I agree because I'm thinking of 10 more. I'm like, I really
I
should have said
know,
that one.
same,
That's
same.
difficult. As far as business books, I have really enjoyed Spencer Johnson and Donald Miller. And then
Yeah,
fiction books,
I know, I know.
I really enjoy Rebecca Yarros, Sarah J. Maas, Frida McFadden, and I know that's more than three, but total. But I could go on and on and on.
And what I think happens is whether you read fiction or you read business, your mind expands. The goal is to learn how to live in the creative part of your existence. And a great book does that for you, whether you're creating your future potential with a business book or creating the imagery of the story coming to life in a fiction book. Both are critically important. So, my challenge to you that are listening today, I'm going to wrap this up with I would challenge you with the same thing I've challenged thousands of other people with now. Read at least one book per month. It doesn't have to be a new book every month, but ideally, until you've read 50 or so, make it a new book every month and then start going back through that. If you will read, you will be better equipped to lead. So I'm Jody Holland,
I'm
Mike
Megan
Grigsby
Slaughter.
Megan
and
Slaughter, and
Megan.
Mike Grigsby. Yeah, we're missing one of our hosts today.
I
Malia
know
Grigsby is not with us, but that happens with scheduling and travel, and we all have kind of important jobs, I think,
he'll be
anyway.
back soon.
She'll be back. But thank you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining Become the Leader. Keep growing forward and become the leader you would follow.